Focus on Headline. And let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. For this, joining us in the studio today, we have our Friday reporters in Changana and Cho Yun-ha. Guys, welcome back.
Good evening.
Good evening to you guys. We're going to start things off with some remarks coming from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He was not happy with the Armed Forces Day speech by President Yoon Suk Yeol earlier this week. Kim directly targeting and making remarks towards the South Korean president in response to his strong warning about North Korea's nuclear program. This again during the Armed Forces Day earlier this week. Kim threatened that North Korea has secured the absolute power of a nuclear state, though none of the countries are actually accepting them as a nuclear state, and would threaten to mobilize all of its offensive capabilities, including the nuclear weapons, if the U.S. and South Korea attempt to infringe on North Korean sovereignty, is what he said. Hannah, you're going to start us off. Give us more about on Kim Jong-un's remarks.
Yes, that's right. Now, Kim Jong-un strongly criticized President Yoon, who had warned that North Korea's use of nuclear weapons would result in the regime's end. And this is the first time in over 2 years that Kim has personally attacked Yoon by name, the last instance being during his speech on North Korea's so-called Victory Day in July 2022. And at that time, Kim referred to Yoon without using his official title, saying, "I remember clearly the reckless remarks and disgraceful behavior Yoon Suk Yeol has made before and after taking office," and launched a tirade of insults. In his latest remarks, Kim emphasized that North Korea is, quote-unquote, a nuclear state and a nuclear power, reiterating his refusal to denuclearize. He warned that if the U.S. and South Korea attempt to use military force against North Korea, his regime will respond with available means. He said that no enemy threats, actions, schemes, or attempts have been able to curb our military dominance, nor will they ever be able to take away our nuclear capabilities. Kim declared and added that we have irreversibly secured absolute power as a nuclear state, along with the systems and functions to use it, having overcome long-standing challenges. Kim further warned that if the enemies, blinded by extreme foolishness and recklessness, ignore our repeated warnings and emboldened by the U.S.-South Korea alliance, try to use military force to violate the sovereignty of the republic, he will not hesitate to use all of his offensive capabilities, including nuclear weapons. He also stated that hoping for survival in a military conflict with a nuclear power is a futile exercise, and if such a situation arises, the survival of South Korea will be impossible. Kim's statement is seen as a direct response to President Yoon's speech, in which he asserted that any use of nuclear weapons by North Korea would lead to the regime's end, and this exchange further cements the hardline versus hardline approach between the two Koreas. Additionally, Kim's remarks reflect his intention to strengthen the North's narrative of severing ties with South Korea, which he previously declared as an enemy state at the end of last year. And his speech was also published in Rodong Shinmun, a North Korean state-run newspaper viewed by the North Korean public. Furthermore, Kim Yo-jong, a deputy department director of the Publicity and Information Department of the Workers' Party of Korea, and Kim Jong-un's sister, mocked South Korea's Armed Forces Day event held on October 1st, dismissing it as a trivial spectacle and a futile clown show filled with all sorts of nobodies.
Yeah, there was a lot of remarks coming out in regards to the Armed Forces Day on Tuesday, right? When they showcased a new missile, the bunker buster missile that's supposed to be used for the 3-axis system. They said they called it an interesting name in regards to this. But here's an interesting one. Kim Jong-un also called President Yoon abnormal man. So he's taking a nice page out of J.D. Vance, kind of calling him weird is what it is. But North Korea, the way that they describe certain people, they use unusual wordings, and so he called him an abnormal man. But it's that's probably the least ferocious comments coming out from North Korea. Kim Yo-jong's actually pretty good with this, but couple of things. One of the things here, nuclear state, that's the big thing, right? The big question about whether or not it's inevitable that the countries, the international community will eventually have to admit the fact that North Korea is a nuclear state. Probably not going to happen anytime near in the future. I mean, they have nuclear weapons. If it was any other country, probably would have been acknowledged as a nuclear state. But if you give them the title as a nuclear state, then it gives them the rights to continue to produce the nuclear weapons. And so you have two sides. Some experts, military experts, are saying that it's inevitable. We're going to have to eventually recognize them as a nuclear state. And then from there on, go on with some negotiation with North Korea. Others are saying that the U.S. is never going to recognize them as a nuclear state, so other countries are going to follow suit. So we'll see. I mean, they're just going to continue to develop their nuclear weapons nevertheless. North Korea on Friday morning restarting once again for the first time in 2 days, I believe. It's sending of trash-carrying balloons towards South Korea. Yoon-ha, let's get the latest on their so-called gray zone provocation.
Sure. So according to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, North Korea launched another round of balloons carrying trash on Friday. Like you said, it was just 2 days before Pyongyang sent those balloons over to Seoul, and there were 150 of them. These balloons, according to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, might reach northern Gyeonggi province and parts of Seoul. And as usual, the Joint Chiefs of Staff asked not to touch them if anyone finds them and take caution as balloons may drop. And this launch of trash-carrying balloons marks the 24th time since Pyongyang first started with this balloon-sending campaign in late May. If you remember the latest reaction by the South Korean military, South Korea's military said it will take stern military measures if North Korea crosses the line by causing serious harm to its people, while what measures these are have not yet been specified. And the military has not tried to shoot down the balloons, as doing so may cause even more serious damage, as we don't know what's attached to these balloons. But the South Korean military has been broadcasting anti-Pyongyang propaganda every day using loudspeakers on the border since July. Meanwhile, 5 North Korean defector groups together on Friday have released rice-filled plastic bottles, USBs that contain K-pop videos, with bags of ramen noodles toward North Korea from Ganghwa Island, Incheon. These items they've released altogether amount to 1 ton of rice, 800 packs of ramen noodles, 400 $1 bills, 200 Bibles, and 500 USBs that store K-pop and K-drama. These North Korean defector groups have done such activities individually as a group before, and they have launched balloons carrying anti-North Korean leaflets, and they released plastic bottles filled with rice and USBs into the Yellow Sea. But all of them coming together to release anti-North Korean items is the first time in the past 4 months. It's been reported that this collective activity was done as North Korean defectors felt that they were not actively responding to North Korea's trash balloons.
Actively responding to North Korea's trash balloons? I mean, the reason why North Korea is actually sending these balloons in the first place is because they're very upset about the anti-Pyongyang leaflets, right? So, like, they're displayed on two sides right now. There are actually a lot of people who are very upset at this anti-Pyongyang activist group right there, because it's one of those things where they kind of provoke North Korea first. That's the reason why they're sending all the garbage. They're saying, if you're going to continue to send us garbage, we're going to send you garbage as well. That's why they're sending trash-carrying balloons. The other concerning thing with this is that some North Korean experts were saying that the big concern is if, let's say, some of the North Koreans are found with some of these items, it could mean public execution, and you're putting them in danger is what it is. And so the government has been trying to find ways to kind of release information about, what the outside world is about. But one of the things that they're trying to work on is how to go about sending those messages in a, I guess, not obvious way, right? Not sending it through like a drone or like a balloon or anything like that, so that they're able to get these information without the North Korean authorities finding about this. So again, they'll be at risk if they're found with these USBs or, all the things that are being sent from South Korea. So there's a lot of mixed feelings in regards to this. Let's move on here. We talked about earlier this week, Seoul National University I guess the approval of the mass leave of absence for its medical students. There is some clash between the dean of the school and, of course, the president of the school as well. Well, SNU's medical school is becoming the first in the country, and concerns are rising, and the government especially concerned that this may be the first of many medical schools that might be approving the mass leave of absence. In response, the Ministry of Education has convened a meeting with the presidents of all medical schools nationwide. Hannah, let's get the latest on this.
Sure. Now, according to the education sector on Friday, Vice Minister Oh Seok-hwan led an online meeting with the presidents of 40 medical schools across the country. And while the specific agenda has not been disclosed, it is believed that the Ministry of Education plans to urge universities to strictly manage academic affairs and not approve collective leaves of absence by medical students. And on September 30th, SNU approved a collected leave of absence request for about 780 medical students for the first semester. And the decision was possible because at SNU, the authority to approve leaves of absence rests with the dean of the medical school rather than the university president. This has raised concerns that other universities where medical schools deans hold similar authority may follow SNU's lead in approving student leave requests. And about half of the country's 40 medical schools grant the authority to approve leaves of absence to medical school deans rather than university presidents. Now, many medical school deans who are also medical professionals and have taught the students directly support approving the leaves to avoid disadvantaging students, especially as their class boycott has lasted for over 7 months, putting them at risk of either failing or taking a leave of absence. Now, some universities even expel students if they fail 1 or 2 times. However, the Ministry of Education maintains its stance that collective leave of absence is not a valid reason for leave. And on Wednesday, the ministry launched a rigorous audit of SNU by deploying 12 staff members. Now, the government continues to urge the medical community to participate in the Medical Reform Special Committee and the ruling opposition council without preconditions, emphasizing that the government is also willing to approach the situation with an open mind. And additionally, the government called on the medical community to cooperate with the Workforce Supply and Demand Estimation Committee, which aims to increase the number of medical professionals.
See, here's the thing. I mean, they're kind of stuck in a bit of a problem right now. If you don't give them the leave of absence, I know that the government, the Ministry of Education, has given them different options like taking night classes or something like that, or extending, not failing them, and then changing the grading system and things like that. But they're still not going to come back. And so if you fail them, that's not going to produce any, they're not going to be able to be doctors moving forward here. And the whole point of this medical reform is to increase the number of doctors here in the country. And so now SNU is realizing, hey, listen, yes, it is true that the deans, because they are medical professors and the presidents usually are not, I think, doctors, the deans are going to side with the medical community, the doctors on this one. But the argument I believe the dean is using is that if you at least give them the leave of absence, we won't fail them. And so if they don't have failing grades, at least when they come back, they can restart and hopefully produce more doctors later on. But if we fail them right now, they're never going to be doctors moving forward here. And so this might be the only option. But I don't know what other cards they have up the sleeve right now. It is getting pretty serious with the shortages of doctors and the medical facilities struggling to fill the need of the patients. The South Korean National Assembly on Friday holding a plenary session for a revote on the 3 contentious bills that President Yoon Suk Yeol had earlier this week used his presidential veto against, this being the 24 bills that he has vetoed since taking office in May 2022. One of the bills calling for a special prosecutor investigation into First Lady Kim Keon Hee's stock manipulations and other allegations. Of course, because the opposition parties do not have a 2/3 majority at the National Assembly. Not surprisingly, those 3 bills were not has not been passed. Yuna, let's get the latest at the National Assembly.
Sure. So other than the bill mandating a probe into First Lady, the two bills that were put to revote were one that mandating a special counsel probe into the alleged involvement of the presidential office and the defense ministry in the military investigation into the death of Maureen Che. And the other bill was about mandating the central and local governments to provide financial support for local currency vouchers to boost local economies. And all of the three bills were originally passed by the opposition-controlled National Assembly on September 19th, but a cabinet meeting on Monday decided to demand a reconsideration, and President Yoon, like you said, exercised his veto on Wednesday. And on Friday, today, these bills didn't pass the National Assembly's plenary session and were scrapped. For a bill that has returned to the National Assembly following a presidential veto to pass the plenary session, more than half of the 300 lawmakers should be present with the approval of 2/3 of the members present. The bills were expected to be rejected and scrapped as the ruling PPP had already decided that the party will vote against the bills. The DP and other opposition parties have strongly called for the passage of the bills mandating an investigation into Yoon and First Lady, and now the bills are scrapped. The DP plans to closely look into allegations during the upcoming National Assembly audit, which is set to begin next week, and reintroduce the bills in November. The bill calling for a special probe into First Lady involves 8 allegations, and one of them includes an alleged Deutsche Motors stock manipulation, and the bill demanding an investigation into the death of Maureen Che focuses on clarifying suspicions around the president and the defense ministry's pressure on the military's investigation into the death in July last year. According to the bill proposed by the DP on a probe into First Lady, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court recommends 4 candidates for the special prosecutor. The opposition party narrows the list down to 2 candidates, and president chooses one of the 2. But the opposition party has the right to veto president's decision and request new candidates, and this is the second time the National Assembly revoted under this bill. Meanwhile, the National Assembly revoted for the 3rd time on the bill mandating a special prosecutor on Maureen Che after being scrapped in the previous 21st National Assembly and again rejected by the current National Assembly in July. While the ruling PPP calls the opposition party's bill proposals unconstitutional, as the opposition parties plan to reintroduce the bills, it is very likely that the National Assembly will be stuck in a repeated cycle of revote in which opposition parties continue to push for the passage of the bills, but only to be faced with presidential vetoes.
So the consensus is that the opposition lawmakers are probably going to put this up for a vote again. They're going to bring it up at the plenary session. They're going to unilaterally pass it with the more than 50% majority that they have, and then continue to do that. And you might be wondering, well, why in the world are they continuously doing this? Well, number one, there's a lot of pressure on Han right now, PPP chief Han Dong-hoon, because one of the campaign pledges when he was running for the leadership role for the ruling party was that he was going to try to push for the special counsel probe bill into not just the Marine Corporal Che, but I believe he hinted that the First Lady Kim Keon Hee as well. And so it was under the context that they do it with, I guess, some of the changes that he wanted to make. He didn't like what the DP was going for with the selection of the special prosecutors and things like that, but to make it a little bit more fair for the PPP. I don't even know what that means, but he's not doing it. He hasn't done it so far. I believe that was one of the things that DP leader Lee Jae-myung has brought up against Han Dong-hoon in the past when they recently met, but he didn't say in regards to that. I believe he's just said that he needs to talk with the ruling party members in regards to this, but every time they bring this up and it gets voted down, and President Yoon does use his veto rights, what happens is the approval rating for the ruling People Power Party continues to go down. If you remember, earlier this year, the PPP, despite the fact that President Yoon had very low approval rating, the PPP, however, had a much higher approval rating compared to the the Democratic Party. That has changed for the past couple of months now. If you look at the surveys that came out a couple of days ago by Research View, it says that PPP has a 30% approval rating compared to the DP with 40%. So that's a 10 percentage point gap that you're looking at right now. And so this is a reason why the opposition party is going to continue to bring this up. Speaking of which, the main opposition Democratic Party will held the General Assembly on Friday at the National Assembly to finalize its stance on the financial investment income tax, which is scheduled to take effect in January next year. The party's going to vote on three options: implementation, postponement, or abolition. And the party leadership will make the final decision based on the results. Hannah, let's get more on this.
Sure. Now, if the majority of lawmakers support postponement, the leadership is expected to decide on specifics, such as a 2-year or 3-year delay. A DP official told reporters that during the General Assembly on Friday, lawmakers will express their opinions on whether to abolish, implement, or postpone the tax, and a simple vote will determine the direction. They added that the General Assembly will decide the direction and the leadership will be entrusted with finalizing the details. For instance, if the majority supports postponement, the leadership will decide how long the delay should be. The DP leadership has scheduled the General Assembly for 10:30 a.m. on Friday, and although the meeting is officially to prepare for the 2 p.m. plenary session, the early timing is unusual, leading to speculation that the session is primarily intended to resolve the party's position on the financial investment income tax. The party aims to finalize its stance before the start of the parliamentary audit on the 7th, which is next Monday, and some predict that the leadership may make an immediate decision after the assembly to avoid further controversy. After a public debate on September 24th, most DP lawmakers are reportedly leaning toward either postponement or abolition. Representative Kim Jong-un, who strongly supported for the implementation at the debate, faced backlash from individual investors for his comment. They said that if you believe the stock market will decline due to the financial investment income tax, why not invest in inverse funds? And this remark is said to have weakened the argument for immediate implementation. And in addition, lawmaker Chung Song-ho, a key figure in the pro-Lee Jae-myung faction, has publicly expressed support for abolishing the tax, and the idea of abolition was reportedly raised during a recent closed-door meeting of the party's leadership. However, there are still strong voices within the party calling for the tax to be implemented as scheduled, and counter-arguments are expected during the General Assembly. Now, some argue that postponing the tax is effectively the same as abolishing it. Even if a 2 or 3 year postponement is decided, it is believed that the tax will be practically impossible to implement due to potential public opposition in light of future political events such as the 2026 local elections and the 2027 presidential election.
Oh boy, let's move on here. Go over to the Middle East. Things are getting pretty tense. The Israel-Hezbollah conflict continuing. This even caused the death of 2 Lebanese army soldiers. It's getting the country's army involved, not the proxy militant groups. Israel and Lebanon exchanging fire for the very first time. Its soldiers. Now Israel has issued evacuation orders for its residents in 25 villages in southern Lebanon. Yunha, let's get the latest on this.
Sure. So this conflict between Israel and Hezbollah continues with the death toll rising. According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, about 2,000 people were killed and more than 9,000 people were injured due to Israel's attacks. The Israeli military on Thursday, or its 4th consecutive day of ground operations targeting Hezbollah, launched airstrikes on Hezbollah's intelligence headquarters in Beirut. While Hezbollah said that it successfully pushed back Israel's attempt to advance, crossing the border, and attacked an Israeli military base, the Israeli military announced that it airstruck Hezbollah's intelligence gathering facilities, command centers, and other infrastructure. On the same day, it was reported that Israeli forces struck and destroyed Hezbollah's public relations office in the southern suburbs of Beirut. And for the first time, like you said, fighting broke out between the Israeli military and the Lebanese army in southern Lebanon, with 2 Lebanese soldiers killed in 2 separate incidents. One of the soldiers was killed while he was escorting the Lebanese Red Cross transporting wounded individuals. This is the first time that a Lebanese soldier died since Israel started ground operations along the Lebanese border. The Lebanese army, in return, also launched gunfire at Israeli military posts, which is also the first time for the Lebanese forces to fire back at the Israeli military. Meanwhile, the Israeli military on Thursday also announced that it attacked a government building in southern Lebanon where Hezbollah stored weapons, killing 15 Hezbollah fighters. The Israeli military also said it killed a Hezbollah commander, Qadr al-Shabiya, who led the attack on a soccer field in the Golan Heights 3 months ago, where children were killed. Now, in return, the Hezbollah launched a rocket attack on a military base in northern Israel. It's been reported that 120 rockets were fired from Lebanon into Israeli territory on Thursday. And Israel issued evacuation orders, like you say, for Israeli people in southern Lebanon, in addition to its previous orders for 24 towns on Wednesday and 28 towns on Tuesday.
So the 2,000 that we're talking about right now is not in recent days, but it's as of since October 8th is what's going on. And now that's raises red flags right now, because October 7th was when Hamas invaded into Israel and took hostages and killed the Israelis. But the following next day, there was already attacks towards Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah. And Hezbollah did not get involved with this, right? And so now when we talked about this, before it used to be Israel versus like Hamas, Israel versus the Houthis, Israel versus Hezbollah. Now it's the Lebanese army that's getting involved with this, which could be signs that an all-out war is looming. And so it doesn't look good. But it seems either side will back off, but only continue to retaliate. While there are countries asking citizens to leave Israel, Lebanon, and Iran immediately, there are the South Korean government also in a rush to evacuate any citizens that are residing over there.
Right, so there are about 140 South Koreans in Lebanon, 480 in Israel, and 110 in Iran. The South Korean government has strongly and repeatedly asked its citizens in the region to leave the countries immediately. And President Yoon on Wednesday, at an emergency meeting with his senior officials, ordered immediate dispatch of military transport aircraft to bring back South Koreans from the region affected by the current crisis in the Middle East. While President prioritized the safety of South Koreans there, it's been reported that he ordered a swift yet measured response to ensure minimum impact on South Korea's energy supply, trade, and supply chain.
Moving on, amid speculation that Israel may strike Iran's oil facilities in retaliation for Iran's missile attacks, U.S. President Joe Biden said on Thursday that he's engaged in discussions regarding Israel's actions. Oh boy, let's hope this doesn't happen. Hannah, tell us more about this.
Sure. Now, it remains unclear whether the discussions President Biden referred to involve Israel targeting Iran's oil facilities. A U.S. government official clarified to the media that Israel has not yet made a concrete decision on the direction of any potential attacks. The day before, when asked whether he supports Israel's potential strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, President Biden responded that my answer is no. Regarding this, Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh stated during a regular briefing that I won't characterize the president's comments, but whatever Israel decides to do in response to Iran will be part of those discussions. And when asked if Iran's oil facilities were included in potential targets, Singh responded that I can't go beyond the discussions about how to respond to Iran, adding that specifying potential targets at this stage would not be helpful. Singh also declined to comment on whether U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin would support Israel targeting Iran's nuclear facilities or oil fields, saying that I won't comment on hypothetical questions or Israel's response plans. A U.S. government official told Reuters that I don't believe Israel has decided how to respond to Iran, including whether to target its oil facilities. The official added that Israel is still in the process of deciding exactly what it will do. Singh also emphasized that the U.S. and Israeli defense ministers communicated communicate frequently. However, she noted that the U.S. was caught off guard by Israel's recent airstrike on a residential area in Damascus, Syria, which reportedly resulted in the death of Hezbollah's former leader.
Let's see. If they decide to attack Iran's oil facilities, it is going to impact all of us, especially here in South Korea, where our benchmark crude is the Dubai crude, and that's going to cut off all the routes in the Middle East. I was just kind of curious where Israel gets all its oil. Azerbaijan remains Israel's leading supplier of crude oil. Italy, Albania, Greece. Gasoline, refined petroleum, Israel, get it from India, Singapore, Greece, Romania, and United States. And so because they don't get, I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, of course, the Middle East is not going to give Israel any of this. So they're basically going, it doesn't matter for us, right? We already have our sources for crude oil. Who cares if the rest of the world are going to be impacted by high rising oil prices because of this? Speaking of which, let's talk about the oil prices, which is getting me really upset because I made the choice of buying a gasoline car last year. Chaos in the Middle East, driving up the oil prices right now. It pushed up the U.S. oil prices with the West Texas Intermediate. If the Iran-Israel conflict escalates, some analysis are saying that the oil price may rise to $200 per barrel. Oh my goodness, $200 a barrel, ladies and gentlemen. It's like it's at $75 or $76 right now. Yuna, tell us more about this.
Sure. So as the Middle East continues to be at its turbulent state, oil prices have gone up. Of course, the U.S. crude oil prices. As of Thursday, West Texas Intermediate crude for November delivery was $73.71 per barrel, which is a 5.15% jump from the previous session. And this was a 3-day straight increase with prices surging almost 8% this week. And the price of December Brent crude futures, which is the global benchmark, also went up by 5.03% to $77.62 per barrel. While some analysis indicate that the spare reserves of the OPEC plus countries managed to keep the international oil prices relatively stable, as conflicts in the Middle East appear to be only intensifying, oil prices are likely to see upward trends going forward. Now, what's at stake is the Strait of Hormuz, which is a gateway for oil shipment in the region. And any potential disruptions in the strait due to conflicts between Israel and Iran would have adverse impact on oil exports from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Some analysis imply that if Israel launch attacks on Iran's oil production or oil infrastructure, oil prices could hit $200 per barrel. And this is relevant to Hannah's previous reporting. U.S. President Joe Biden's remarks made some headlines regarding this matter. Biden on Thursday, when asked by some reporters if he would support Israel's strikes on Iran's oil infrastructure, he said, quote unquote, "We're discussing that. I think that would be a little anyway." And he left the scene as he was leaving the White House, which is not clear enough given that this is an answer given out without any preparation to a very loaded question. On this, some analysis say that the potential Israel's attack on Iran's oil infrastructure may be a possibility now closer to reality, while pointing out how the Biden administration's focus has been on keeping oil prices stable ahead of the U.S. presidential election in November until now.
If it goes $200 a barrel, I'm going to have to start walking to work or something like that. This $200, that's ridiculous. But I think that kind of shows you the gravity of the situation, how serious things are. And it's only going to make oil countries richer because of that. On Thursday, the Ukrainian military announced that it had attacked Russian radar systems using the U.S.-supplied ATACMS missile. According to the local daily Kyiv Independent, the Ukrainian military said it struck the Russian Nebo-M radar system without specifying the exact time or location of the attack. Hannah, let's get more on this.
Sure. Now, the Ukrainian military added that the destruction of the radar would open up an air corridor, allowing for more effective use of long-range missiles supplied by the West, such as the Storm Shadow Shadow and Scalp missiles. The Nebo-M is a radar system capable of detecting stealth aircraft such as F-22 and F-35, as well as long-range ballistic missiles. The Kyiv Independent reported that the Russian military is estimated to have only 10 operational Nebo-M radar systems remaining. Additionally, Ukraine announced that it had launched a drone attack on a military airfield in Voronezh Oblast, about 200 kilometers from the northeastern border. The attack targeted a weapons depot, fighter jet hangars, and aviation fuel storage facilities, and the Ukrainian Security Service claimed that Russian forces were using this airfield to launch guided bomb attacks on Ukrainian territory. In the northern Chernihiv region of Ukraine, 3 people, including a 6-year-old child, were killed and 4 others were injured in a Russian drone strike, and the governor of Chernihiv alleged that Russian forces had deliberately targeted a liquefied gas transport truck, causing an explosion and igniting a fire in a residential building. Meanwhile, the Russian Ministry of Defense officially announced that it had captured at a key strategic location in Donetsk Oblast on the Eastern Front. And the previous day, the Ukrainian military had reported that they decided to retreat from the area to avoid being encircled by Russian forces. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky commented that the soldiers who withdrew are still Ukrainian citizens, and it was the right decision to save their lives by leaving the area.
This is the other situation where it seems like there's no end. I know President Volodymyr Zelensky said that he might propose or I don't know, show what his victory plans are. But again, victory plans, Ukraine can't win this war by itself. I mean, which means that the victory plan most likely means that we need more weapons from the United States and its allies and the use of long-range weapons. But Putin did come out saying that if they do approve the long-range weapon usage for Ukraine, they're going to start using nuclear weapons. So that's the other concerning thing. Let's move on. NATO's new Secretary General Mark Rutte visited Ukraine on Thursday, met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky asked to expedite the provision of armed support of Ukraine's Western supporters. Let's get the details of this.
Sure. NATO's Secretary General visited Ukraine after only 2 days of his inauguration to meet with President Zelensky on Thursday local time. They held a joint press conference after they met, and Secretary General Rutte said it was very important for him to pay a visit to Ukraine at the start of his term, and he said to Zelensky that this visit is, quote-unquote, to make crystal clear to you, to the people of Ukraine, and to everyone watching that NATO stands with Ukraine. While Rutte added that supporting Ukraine and replenishing our own stocks means increasing industrial production, that will be a priority for me. Zelensky said that he will focus on convincing his Western allies to shoot down Russian missiles and drones fired targeting Ukraine. And he stressed that Ukraine is in need of air defense and long-range weapons, while adding that, in his opinion, Ukraine's partners are already dragging out, asking for expedited supply of military aid. He asked NATO members to take a more active role in supporting Ukraine to protect itself from Russia's aerial attacks. It's been reported that the two leaders also discussed Ukraine's victory plan in a lead-up to a NATO meeting in Germany next week. Meanwhile, South Korea's Export-Import Bank of Korea and Ukrainian Finance Ministry signed a loan agreement on Wednesday local time. Under this agreement, the South Korean bank will provide financial support of $100 million to the Ukrainian government. While South Korea signed a framework agreement with Ukraine in April to provide $2.1 billion in the form of economic cooperation funds in the mid to long term, this is the first financial support by South Korea to add to Ukraine's government budget.
Made It Up over in London says, I'm no economist, but I'm guessing oil is one of those products which inflation measures. Does this mean that inflation will spike if oil prices shoot up dramatically? They call it core inflation, right? If you take out, energy and food prices, and they always say the core inflation's okay. Yes, it is going to impact us severely if the oil prices skyrocket. Inflation's going to go pick back up, and then all the major banks are going to be, oh, it's time to start raising our interest rates once again, and all the people who have been taking out loans and mortgages, small businesses are going to start closing down because they can't afford to pay more of the mortgages. It impacts all of us. That's the thing. That's the reason why we continue to keep a close tab on what's going on in the Middle East and, of course, over in Russia as well. Guys, thank you very much for your reports. Have a safe weekend. We'll see you guys again next time.
Thank you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang Radio application or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.